and welcome to my channel. Now, Diddy is a hot topic at the moment because most media outlets are talking about the lawsuit that his ex-girlfriend Cassie filed yesterday. So the lawsuit is quite lengthy, but I'm going to try and read most of it so you can get the gist of what the lawsuit is all about before I give my thoughts on the whole issue. So let's see what it entails. So the court in question is the United States Southern District of New York Court. You can see the plaintiff is Cassandra Ventura. Those are the full names of Cassie as the plaintiff. And the defendants are Sean Combs. Those are the government names of Diddy. Bad Boy Entertainment, his company, Bad Boy Records, Epic Records, Combs Enterprises LLC, and Doe Corps 1 to 10. And there's a trigger warning issued before the details of the suit. So the trigger warning says this document contains highly graphic information of S nature, including S assault. So I'm also going to use a lot of code words to prevent this video from getting flagged by YouTube for using inappropriate language. So just bear with me. So it starts by saying, plaintiff Cassandra Ventura hereby alleges as and for her complaint against the defendant Sean Combs, Bad Boy Entertainment, Bad Boy Records, Epic Records, Combs Enterprises LLC, and Doe Corporations 1 to 10 as follows. So the preliminary statement says, defendant Sean Combs is a rapper and record executive popularly known by his stage names Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or Diddy. They forgot to put love because that's what he's rolling with currently. So Mr. Comb came to fame in the early 90s with his record label Bad Boy Records. He rose to prominence in the music and entertainment industry over the decades and is regularly referred to as a hip hop mogul. In 2022, Mr. Combs received the Lifetime Achievement Award at the BET. During his acceptance speech, Mr. Combs stated, I have to give a special shout out. Thank you, love, to the people that was really there for me. He named a number of people before adding, and also Cassie for holding me down in the dark times. And it was strange for him to shout out Cassie at that event because he attended that event with his current public sugar baby, Young Miami, who was looking like a fool holding up a placard for him. I'm going to show you that image after I finish reading the document. So the third fact says the truth, however, is that Cassie was held down by Mr. Combs and endured over a decade of his violent behavior and disturbed demands. For Miss Ventura, the dark times were those she spent trapped by Mr. Combs in a cycle of abuse, violence, and trafficking. Among other violent and unlawful acts, Mr. Combs urged Miss Ventura in her own home after she tried to leave him, often punched, beat, kicked, and stomped on Miss Ventura, resulting in bruises, burst lips, black eyes, and bleeding. Blew up a man's car after he learned that he was romantically interested in Miss Ventura, forced Miss Ventura to engage in acts with male workers while pleasuring himself and filming the encounters, ran out of his apartment with a F-arm in pursuit of a rival industry executive whom he learned was nearby, demanded that Miss Ventura carry his F arm in her purse just to make her uncomfortable and demonstrate how dangerous he is, and introduced Miss Ventura to a lifestyle of excessive alcohol and substance abuse, and required her to procure illicit prescriptions to satisfy his own addictions. Miss Ventura met Combs in 2005 when she was 19 years old and he was 37 years old. He signed her to his label Bad Boy Records, and within a few years lured Miss Ventura into an ostentatious, fast paced, and drug fueled lifestyle and into a romantic relationship with him. Her boss, one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry, and a vicious, cruel, and controlling man nearly 2 decades her senior. Miss Combs asserted complete control over Miss Ventura's personal and professional life, thereby ensuring her inability to escape his hold. He provided unprecedented avenues for success for the aspiring artist, but in return demanded obedience, loyalty, and silence. Throughout their relationship, Mr. Combs was prone to uncontrollable rage and frequently beat Miss Ventura savagely. These beatings were witnessed by Mr. Combs' staff and employees of Bad Boy Entertainment and Mr. Combs' related businesses, but no one dared to speak up against their frightening and ferocious boss. Following these episodes of horrific abuse, Mr. Combs would immediately attempt to hide Miss Ventura and the evidence of his violent rage. He often showered her with gifts following incidences of physical violence, a typical pattern of behavior for serial abusers. In addition to the physical assaults, Mr. Combs frequently reminded Miss Ventura of his ability to cause serious harm, whether by requiring her to carry his G in her purse or by blowing up the car of a musician that was romantically interested in Miss Ventura. When I say G, I mean I mean the weapon that you know blasts out bullets. So, adding salt to injury, Mr. Combs used illegal substances and threats of violence to force Miss Ventura into repeated unwanted encounters with the male S workers. Over the years that Mr. Combs abused Miss Ventura physically and S, she again and again tried to escape his tight hold over her life. Every time she hid, Mr. Combs' vast network of corporations and affiliated entities found her, and those who worked for Mr. Combs' companies implored her to return to him. Many went as far as to explicitly state that her failure to return to Mr. Combs would hinder her success in the entertainment industry. I wonder where her family was when she was trying to make that escape. Anyway, the next point says when she believed that she had finally separated from her longtime abuser, she joined Mr. Combs for a dinner, after which he forced her into her home and urged her while she repeatedly said no and tried to push him away. Miss Ventura has now fully escaped Mr. Combs, but the harm that the assaults and abuse he caused her to experience for nearly a decade will forever haunt her. She has required intensive medical and psychological care to recover from the trauma she lived through. So, if you don't know, she's now married to a guy that Diddy had hired for her as a personal trainer, and they currently have 2 kids. So the next point says she cannot, however, continue to live in silence about what she endured. Mr. Combs remains immensely powerful and immensely dangerous. Miss Ventura therefore seeks justice for the decade of her life that Mr. Combs took away from her with threats of violence, excessive use of D's, physical and psychological abuse, and S, slavery. Accordingly, Miss Ventura brings this action seeking injunctive, declaratory, and monetary relief against defendants in violation of federal S trafficking laws, 18 USC 1591. According to the New York State Human Rights Law and the Gender Motivated Violence Act, New York Services for Victims of Human Trafficking, California S Abuse and Cover Up Accountability Act, and the California Trafficking Victims Protection Act. So, jurisdiction and venue. The court has jurisdiction pursuant to 28 USC, as the action asserts. That's legal jargon that doesn't make sense to me. So let's go to where it makes sense for regular folks like us. So it says, pursuant to 28, venue is proper in this court because a substantial part of the events or omissions giving rise to this action, including the unlawful employment practices and intentional and negligent tortious conduct alleged herein, occurred in this district. Okay, so they're saying it's been filed in New York because some of the things Ventura is alleging Diddy did to her took place in New York. So it goes on to say the parties, plaintiff Cassandra Ventura is a resident of the states of California and Connecticut and was employed by defendants Bad Boy Records. Ventura meets the definition of employee of defendants under all relevant statutes. Defendant Sean Combs, upon information and belief, resides within the states of California. At all relevant times herein, Mr. Combs met the definition of an employer of plaintiff under all relevant statutes. Defendant Bad Boy Entertainment is a music, media, and entertainment company founded by defendant Sean Combs, which includes the record label Defendant Bad Boy Records LLC. At all relevant times, defendant was an employer of plaintiff within the meaning of all applicable statutes. It means she went after everything that describes Sean Combs, even the business entities, so that he doesn't find a loophole of freeing himself from this lawsuit. So Defendant Epic Records is a New York-based record label owned by Sony Music Entertainment, a subsidiary of Sony Corporation of America. At all relevant times, defendant was an employer of plaintiff within the meaning of all applicable statutes. I think they're just linking the two of them because Bad Boy was sort of connected to Sony Music Entertainment and Epic Records. So those are legal jargons. So let's go to the factual allegations. So teenage Miss Ventura meets middle-aged Mr. Combs as her career begins. So Miss Ventura met Combs in 2005 or early 2006 after Combs heard Miss Ventura's first single playing in a club and expressed interest in signing her to his label Bad Boy Records. At that time, Miss Ventura was 19 and Combs was 37. Within months, in February of 2006, Miss Ventura signed a 10-album deal with Mr. Combs. That's unheard of. Because usually, new artists sign maybe one or two album deals because the record label doesn't know how well they'll perform in the market. So for him to just offer 10 album deal upfront, it means he wasn't serious about the whole issue, because you can say for the whole 11 years that Cassie spent by his side, she only released, is it only a single or one album? Anyway, so Miss Ventura's first album, Cassie, was released in August of 2006, debuting at number 4 on the US Billboard 200. To promote the album, Miss Ventura made television appearances on MTV's Total Request Live and BET's 106 and Pack. Miss Ventura suffered from significant performance anxiety during these appearances, and press outlets were highly critical of Miss Ventura's performances on these shows. Mr. Combs, however, sought to rehabilitate his newly signed talent by telling MTV News, "You could hear the nervousness in her voice. And to be honest, I kind of smiled at it because it made me really appreciate what I really love about her. She is a regular person. It just made me appreciate that she got nervous, and it was kind of cute to me. To be honest, you've got to understand that success for her is coming out of nowhere. It's just so huge, and sometimes everybody handles it differently. Maybe he had already started manipulating her. That's why she was nervous." So while clearly paternalistic in noting that it was cute to him how regular Miss Ventura appeared, Mr. Combs' comment rang true to some extent upon signing with the Bad Boy Records. Miss Ventura was quickly thrust into the spotlight and was unfamiliar with how to navigate her celebrity status. Mr. Combs' recognition and glorification of Miss Ventura's naivety proved to set the groundwork for his manipulative and coercive romantic and S relationship with Miss Ventura, a woman nearly 2 decades his junior. Within a year of signing with Bad Boy Records, Mr. Combs became deeply entrenched in Miss Ventura's life, almost immediately asserting possession and control over her and inserting himself into all aspects of her career and personal life. In November of 2006, Mr. Combe invited Miss Ventura to perform his song Come to Me along with him at the MTV Europe Music Award in Copenhagen, Denmark. After rehearsals for their performance, Mr. Combs walked around in a robe with a drink in his hand, flaunting his lavish party lifestyle to his label newly signed artist. During hair and makeup leading up to the performance, Miss Ventura's hairstylist and Mr. Combs' makeup artist told Miss Ventura that Mr. Combs was interested in Miss Ventura. Miss Ventura shrugged off the gossip and, in fact, expressed disgust given the large age gap between her and the president of her record label. Emphasizing the age and power dynamic early on in their working relationship, Mr. Combs positioned himself as a father figure and protector of Miss Ventura. By way of example, after returning to New York, after a trip to Las Vegas, during which she endured a brief hospital stay, Miss Ventura, who by then was fully healthy, went out to a club with her friends. When Mr. Combs saw her out, he reprimanded her, telling her to go home and take care of herself. At the time, Miss Ventura thought that her record label was looking out for her well being and that Mr. Combs had her best interests in mind. Mr. Combs also ensured he was intertwined with Miss Ventura's personal and social life, for instance, by inviting himself to Miss Ventura's 21st birthday party in Las Vegas. He also brought along famous musicians and producers, thereby flaunting his celebrity status and influence in front of a young and impressionable Miss Ventura. Although Mr. Combs knew that Miss Ventura was in a relationship at the time, at that time, Cassie was supposed to be in a relationship with a producer called Ryan Leslie, who was he's actually the one who introduced her to Diddy, and he was doing some production for Bad Boy Records. So Diddy shamelessly stole the girl from him. And even though he was publicly in a relationship with Kim Porter, that is his second baby mama, Mr. Combs nevertheless pursued Miss Ventura at an after party in a hotel suite following Miss Ventura's 21st birthday party. Mr. Combs pulled Miss Ventura into a bathroom and forcibly kissed her. Miss Ventura did not consent to this unwanted contact. She immediately ran out of the bathroom and the hotel suite and cried. She told her best friend at the time about what had happened, but was too scared to tell anyone else. At the Video Music Awards the following day, Miss Ventura's boyfriend at the time joined her and Mr. Combs at a table at the awards ceremony. Mr. Combs became angry, telling Miss Ventura that the invitation to the awards ceremony was only for her and not for her significant other. It must be Ryan Leslie. So, despite her clear rejection of Mr. Combs' advances, Mr. Combs continued to demand Miss Ventura spend time with him, including for a weekend at Mr. Combs' residence in Miami and for nights out in New York City. On one particular night around September 2007, Mr. Combs insisted on taking Miss Ventura out. Miss Ventura acquiesced, fearing that rejecting Mr. Combs' request would have repercussions for her album deal with Mr. Combs and his company, Bad Boy Records. Mr. Combs picked up Miss Ventura from her apartment in Manhattan in a blue luxury vehicle. Miss Ventura was surprised that when she got into the car, Mr. Combs was already in he was high. Let's just use a simple word. He handed her a pill and told her to take it. When Miss Ventura asked what the pill was, Mr. Combs dismissed her and told her she would like it. She later learned the pill was ecstasy, something Miss Ventura had never before tried and did not want to try. This was the first time Mr. Combs got Miss Ventura high. Mr. Combs then proceeded to drive recklessly at very high speeds down the west side highway of Manhattan. Miss Ventura was very scared but did not dare to object to Mr. Combs, who appeared drunk, high, and agitated. Mr. Combs took Miss Ventura to an upscale lounge in downtown Manhattan, where he proceeded to get into an altercation with the security staff, who would not permit Mr. Combs to enter, presumably because he was belligerent. Miss Ventura decided to go home, but for the remainder of the night, Mr. Combs messaged Miss Ventura incessantly, complaining that he left him high and alone. In the early fall of 2007, Mr. Combs flexed his power and influence when he paid a promoter to create a fake flyer for a party hosted by Miss Ventura. This fake posting allowed Miss Ventura to have an excuse to go to Miami, Florida, and get away from her boyfriend by using the guise of a legitimate event she had to attend. Miss Ventura was stunned at how easily Mr. Combs was able to recruit others to lie for him. Miss Ventura was uncomfortable with the fake flyer, but because the request to go to Miami was made by the owner of her record label, And because she was scared to go against his wishes and face repercussions to her nascent career, Miss Ventura agreed to join Mr. Combs in Florida. During this trip to Miami, Mr. Combs provided Miss Ventura with the copious amounts of drugs. She became more intoxicated than she ever had before, and her intoxication lasted throughout the weekend trip. As she wanted Mr. Combs to continue to support her career, she felt she could not refuse Mr. Combs urging her to take more drugs. After providing her with the drugs, Mr. Combs had intercourse with Miss Ventura during this trip. Within 2 years of meeting Mr. Combs, Miss Ventura found herself lured into the immediate circle of her boss, the owner of her record label, and one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry. So, from the very start of their relationship, Mr. Combs exerted his power and influence over Miss Ventura, and this dynamic was fueled by their nearly 20-year age difference, as well as their relative positions in the entertainment industry. Oh, Mr. Combs, considered a music mogul, and Miss Ventura at the very start of her career as an entertainer. Mr. Combs' aggressive and demanding approach to those he worked with made it impossible for anyone to challenge him, and Miss Ventura soon learned that Mr. Combs insisted on blind loyalty from everyone in his inner circle. Although Miss Ventura had saved up some earnings from her young modeling career, Mr. Combs' ostentatious display of wealth was intimidating to her. Mr. Combs paid for things with wads of cash and would repeatedly tell Miss Ventura, "Don't worry about money, I have money." Mr. Combs expensed lavish vacations for him and Miss Ventura, purchased a car for her, paid for her apartment, and provided her with extensive amounts of designer clothing. I'm sure those cars and apartments were still in his name. So around 2008 or 2009, Mr. Combs began to rent an apartment in Manhattan for Miss Ventura. The apartment was within walking distance of Mr. Combs' New York residence. He first showed Miss Ventura the apartment by bringing her there along with her parents. This is strange. You mean her parents were in the picture all along? I guess they were also blown away by Diddy's wealth. So Miss Ventura's parents were skeptical of the moguls' displays of wealth, but proud of their daughter's newfound success. Around 2010, Mr. Combs similarly paid for an apartment for Miss Ventura in Los Angeles, which was located about 5 minutes away from Mr. Combs' residence. He paid for many of her apartments in California and also purchased a Jaguar for her around 2013 or 2014. All aspects of Miss Ventura's life were controlled by either Mr. Combs or his management companies. Every event Miss Ventura attended, from the travel to the makeup and clothing, was paid for directly by Mr. Combs and his affiliated companies. Compounding this all-encompassing intrusion into her life, Mr. Combs secured his control over the young and impressionable Miss Ventura by introducing her to a drug-fueled lifestyle that kept her complacent and compliant. Mr. Combs first introduced Miss Ventura to opiates around 2008 and would often have pills and other drugs out in the open like candy. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs has been addicted to prescription painkillers and took ecstasy frequently. Oh, this document seems like it's repeating itself. Anyway, let's just carry on. At first, Miss Ventura was given the prescriptions that Mr. Combs received from a doctor in Miami, Florida. This doctor needs to be struck off. Eventually, when Mr. Combs exhausted his supply of pills, he demanded that Miss Ventura procure prescriptions from his Miami doctor in her own name. Okay, so the doctor was operating above board. Mr. Combs also became deeply involved in Miss Ventura's personal life, which his personal staff attending to Miss Ventura, with his personal staff attending to Miss Ventura's day-to-day travel and other needs, including medical care. And on multiple occasions, Mr. Combs had Miss Ventura's personal medical records sent directly to his email address. What's up with those doctors? Or is it Cassie herself who was sending the medical records to him? For instance, when Miss Ventura began experiencing memory loss, potentially due to excessive drug use and or head injuries caused by Mr. Combs' beatings, as described below, her MRI results were provided directly to Mr. Combs, and Mr. Combs also repeatedly arranged for his staff to drive Miss Ventura to certain doctor's appointments. Oh my God. In this way, Mr. Combs exerted ownership of Miss Ventura. And as another example of the ways in which he manipulated Miss Ventura and ensured obedience, early on in their relationship, he asked Miss Ventura what she called her grandfather. When Ventura said that she referred to her grandfather as Pop, Mr. Combs perversely insisted that Miss Ventura refer to him with that nickname. Oh my goodness. If it's true, Diddy is sick. So, what started as a whirlwind of celebrity meetings and drug and alcohol fueled parties, however, quickly turned frightening and violent. Miss Ventura was also exposed to the intense violence that pervaded Mr. Combs' rise to fame. For example, on one occasion, when Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura were using drugs together in his home, one of his security staff barged in and announced that Suge Knight, a longtime rival of Mr. Combs, was spotted at Mel's Drive-In Diner in LA. Mr. Combs began to get dressed, retrieved multiple guns from a safe, and ran out of his home to where he believed Mr. Knight was dining. Miss Ventura became terrified and began to cry. On at least two occasions, Mr. Combs demanded that Miss Ventura hold Mr. Combs' guns in her purse. Miss Ventura had no familiarity with guns and was petrified that the firearm would accidentally go off in her purse. There was no clear reason why Mr. Combs required her to hold his guns except to reinforce to his young girlfriend that he was violent, powerful, and dangerous. Over the next decade, multiple times each year, Mr. Combs would violently beat Ventura, leaving bruises on her body. And after every instance in which he beat Miss Ventura, Mr. Combs used his money and power to orchestrate extensive efforts to hide the evidence of his abuse, including by hiding Miss Ventura in hotels for days at a time to let her bruises heal. In one such instance, after a party with Jay-Z, why did they have to mention Jay-Z's name? I don't think he appreciates that. So after a party with Jay-Z, Mr. Combs beat Miss Ventura repeatedly in an Escalade, including by kicking and hitting her. He forced her out of the vehicle on Fifth Avenue in New York City. She was eventually able to eventually was able to hail a cab and get to her apartment in Manhattan, where she cried in fear, realizing there was no one she could tell about what had happened at the hands of his incredibly powerful man. at the hands of this incredibly powerful man. She spent the subsequent 3 days hiding in her apartment. In January of 2009, after Mr. Combs learned that Miss Ventura spoke to another music manager at a party in Los Angeles, he became enraged. She had hoped speaking to this manager would allow her to further grow her career and that Mr. Combs would be happy for her. But instead, he became extremely angry and pulled her uh, out of the club where the party was taking place. In the car leaving the club, Mr. Combs beat Miss Ventura, pushing her into a corner of the vehicle and stopping on her face. Mr. Combs' security staff, Roger Bones, tried to stop the beating but was unable to de escalate the situation. When the car arrived at Mr. Combs' residence, Miss Ventura attempted to run away, but Mr. Combs followed her and proceeded to again kick her in the face. Miss Ventura was bleeding profusely and was ushered into Mr. Combs' home, where she began to throw up from the violent assault. Upon recognizing the damage he had done and the physical evidence of his abuse, Mr. Combs panicked and forced his staff to bring Miss Ventura to a hotel suite at the London Hotel in LA, where she was required to stay for a week. During this stay, as her injuries from the beating healed, Miss Ventura began to fully realize that Mr. Combs' tremendously loyal network not only knew about and witnessed his assault, but also that these witnesses were not willing to do anything meaningful to stop Mr. Combs' behavior. She recognized that she was powerless and that reporting Mr. Combs to the authorities would not alter Mr. Combs' status or influence, but would merely give Mr. Combs another excuse to hurt her. While in the hotel, she asked to go home to her parents, but Mr. Combs wouldn't let her leave. She lied to her mother when asked about an online gossip forum that reported the assault. Oh, she had developed Stockholm syndrome at this point. Mr. Combs proceeded to instruct his assistant to purchase excessive amounts of gifts for Miss Ventura, which were delivered to the hotel room where she remained trapped. Miss Ventura was terrified, isolated, and unable to see a pathway out of Mr. Combs' abusive hold on her life. She found herself becoming numb to the abuse she was experiencing and became entirely beholden to Mr. Combs' demands. She began to blindly follow his instructions out of fear of again being on the receiving end of a vicious beating. By Mr. Combs' own admission, his relationship with Miss Ventura was like Bobby and Whitney. Goodness. A clear acknowledgement of the unequal power dynamic and excessive domestic violence that permeated their relationship. From the outset looking in, Miss Ventura had had others refer to her relationship with Mr. Combs as akin to Ike and Tina. For her volatile and abusive partner, who also owned her label and therefore held her future success in his hands, had fully exerted control over every aspect of her life. So when it comes to the S trafficking allegations, within a few months of beginning a romantic relationship with 40-year-old Mr. Combs, the 22-year-old Miss Ventura felt beholden to his whims and demands. While in New York City, Mr. Combs told Miss Ventura that he wanted to engage in a fantasy of his called in a fantasy of his called voyeurism. Mr. Combs said it would turn him on if he saw Miss Ventura with another D. Oh, the first time Mr. Combs hired a man and brought the man into his home in LA. The man, Mr. Combs, and Miss Ventura wore masquerade masks and ingested drugs. Mr. Combs directed Miss Ventura to perform S acts with this man. While Mr. Combs watched them, he pleasured himself while he directed Miss Ventura and the man to do specific S acts. The entire encounter lasted multiple days. Oh my goodness. Mr. Combs began to call the arrangements a freak off or FO. He would repeatedly tell Miss Ventura at random moments that he wanted an FO, and Miss Ventura was eventually expected to facilitate the location and the hiring of male S workers. At certain points during Miss Ventura and Mr. Combs' relationship, he would insist on FO weekly. Mr. Combs would repeatedly tell Miss Ventura that this practice was our thing and our secret. FOs would often take place in hotel suites, including at the Trump International Hotel in Columbus Circle, La Matage Beverly Hill, the London Hotel in LA, the Intercontinental Century City, the Intercontinental Atlanta, the Intercontinental New York City, and the One Hotel in New York and in Miami. The Mandarin Hotel in New York and in Miami, and Fontainebleau in Miami, Beverly Hills Hotel, and Shutters on the Beach in LA. On one occasion, around 2013, Mr. Combs had an FO set up at the Intercontinental Hotel in New York City, after which he was charged with tens of thousands of dollars in damages by the hotel. What were they doing for them to damage the hotel? Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs' chief of staff, Tony Fletcher, paid the invoice charged by the hotel. Miss Ventura was eventually instructed to use. Anyway, let's carry on. Mr. Combs' assistants would help to set up the FOs, including by setting up the hotel suites with baby oil and Astroglide, whatever that is. It must be some form of lubricant. Eventually instructed to use websites and escort services to find male S workers to participate in the FOs. Mr. Combs told Miss Ventura to search for large BPs on the website. Sometimes Mr. Combs would pay to fly male S workers to his location, including to multiple cities in the US as well as abroad. He required Miss Ventura and his staff to help him make these arrangements. Mr. Combs' assistants would help to set up the FOs, including by setting up hotel suites with the baby oil and Astroglide. I'm assuming that's some form of lubricant. Mr. Combs always supplied Miss Ventura and the S workers with copious amounts of drugs before and during the FOs. Mr. Ventura was given ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, ketamine, marijuana, and alcohol in excessive amounts during FOs, which allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. It became commonplace to get IV fluids in the days after an FO to recover from the excessive substances pushed upon her. Miss Ventura was required to dress up in lingerie for an FO, and Mr. Combs insisted she wear white nail polish to contrast her nails with the skin of the black men he hired to have S with her. During the FO, Mr. Combs would instruct Miss Ventura to pour excessive amounts of oil over herself, and Mr. Combs would then instruct Miss Ventura and the sex workers to speak to each other, and then would specifically tell Miss Ventura where to touch the S workers. Mr. Combs would say things like, grab the BBD and ask her how does it feel, as he directed her to perform for him. During the A4s, in addition to directing Miss Ventura and the pleasuring of himself, Mr. Combs would use his phone, laptop, and tablet to film Miss Ventura having S with the hired S worker. He treated the forced encounter as a personal art project, adjusting the candles he used for lighting to frame the videos he took. While Miss Ventura quickly deleted any photographs or videos of S acts if they were taken on her phone, Mr. Combs repeatedly made clear that he retained many videos of Miss Ventura during A4s. I'm guessing that is for blackmail in case she decided to go out of step with his requirements. Even when she deleted the videos, Mr. Combs would tell Miss Ventura that he was able to recover deleted videos from her devices. On one occasion, he sat next to her on a flight and made her watch a video she thought she had deleted, reinforcing her inability to escape and the immense power he held over her. Mr. Combs would pay the male S workers a few $1,000s in cash for their services. During some FOs, Mr. Combs would become extremely intoxicated and would hit Miss Ventura in front of the male S workers. Miss Ventura was repulsed by Mr. Combs' demands, but between the physical beating and the recognizing his incredible power and incredible temper, Miss Ventura became petrified of her partner and boss and felt that she could not say no. He even would present her with lavish gifts prior to or in the middle of the A4s, seemingly acknowledging the ways in which these forced S encounters constituted work, in quotes, for Miss Ventura, and that he needed to compensate her for this work. At one point, he had given her so many designer bracelets for A4s and immediately following his brutal beatings that she felt that she was shackled by his presence. Frequently, her anxiety before an A4 would become so great that she would become physically ill, sometimes to the point of vomiting. While kneeling over the toilet, Mr. Combs would shame her into performing for him, eventually forcing her to get up and proceed with the encounter. She knew firsthand that telling Mr. Combs that she did not want to engage in efforts was met with anger and violence. In addition, any suggestion that Miss Ventura would refuse the F4 or otherwise report Mr. Combs' abuse was met with ultimatums by Mr. Combs, who would say that uh, Miss Ventura could not go to the police because she had a lot to lose. Around August of 2015, for example, in the middle of surprise birthday dinner for Miss Ventura's 29th birthday, Mr. Combs insisted that Miss Ventura leave the party and go to a hotel for an FO. When she expressed that she did not want to go, Mr. Combs had Miss Ventura cornered by his security staff in order to force her to live with him. After this FO, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura went back to the hotel room that Miss Ventura was staying in, where some of Miss Ventura's friends were already hanging out. Mr. Combs was severely intoxicated and at one point during the night picked up one of Miss Ventura's friends like a child and dangled the friend over the balcony of the 17th floor hotel suite. Miss Ventura and her friends were scared by Mr. Combs' erratic behavior, but Miss Ventura was heavily sedated because of the drugs she took to participate in the A4 and therefore was unable to respond to Mr. Combs' terrifying behavior. The A4s became work for Miss Ventura, and despite her protestations, Mr. Combs insisted on this intricately staged and forced S encounters between Miss Ventura and various male S workers. Anytime she tried to create distance between her and Mr. Combs, he used his networks to find her and convince her to return to his abuse. So then this means she had an opportunity to escape. On multiple occasions, Mr. Combs sent his employees to lure Miss Ventura back. And in 2011, during a rough patch in Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura's relationship, Miss Ventura had a brief relationship with the musician Kid Cudi. When Mr. Combs returned from a trip, he demanded another F4 from Miss Ventura. She acquiesced, and during this F4, Mr. Combs found Miss Ventura's phone and found emails between her and Kid Cudi. Mr. Combs became enraged and proceeded to place a manual corkscrew between his fingernails and lunged at Miss Ventura. Miss Ventura ran away to stay at Kid Cudi's home to escape Mr. Combs' wrath. Soon thereafter, one of Mr. Combs' staff members told Miss Ventura that he needed to just talk to Mr. Combs, even though Mr. Combs was enraged. Feeling like she could not escape Mr. Combs and his network of enforcers, Miss Ventura returned to Mr. Combs. He hit her several times and then kicked her in the back as she tried to run out the door. She went to her parents' home in Connecticut where her mother took pictures of the bruises Mr. Combs had left on Miss Ventura's body. In February of 2012, during Paris Fashion Week, Mr. Combs told Miss Ventura that he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car and that he wanted to ensure that Kid Cudi was home with his friends when it happened. Around that time, Kid's car exploded in his driveway. Miss Ventura was terrified as she began to fully comprehend what Mr. Combs was both willing and able to do to those he believed had slighted him. In 2015, Miss Ventura spoke to a popular music manager at an after party in a hotel suite in Las Vegas. Mr. Combs saw her speaking to this manager, and Stanley told her to step into the bedroom adjoining the suite. In the bedroom, Mr. Combs beat Miss Ventura severely. She ran from corner to corner of the room, trying to avoid Mr. Combs beating and kicking. When she tried to lock herself in the bathroom, he pushed through and punched and kicked her while she curled up under the toilet. Her screams were drowned out by the loud music playing in the outside area of the hotel suite. When Mr. Combs, head of security and assistants, saw Miss Ventura after the assault, they began to cry. Miss Ventura had 2 black eyes, a burst and bruised lip, and a huge welt on her forehead. Upon seeing the results of his vicious attack, Mr. Combs immediately took steps to conceal his wrongdoing. He forced Miss Ventura to stay at his home in Holm Bay Hills, along with one of his sons. While there, Mr. Combs FaceTimed Miss Ventura and stated, "You gotta go up and put more makeup on so that my son does not see you like that." She did put makeup on as per Mr. Combs' demands. Miss Ventura felt that she had no choice but to obey her abuser, even though security guards, assistants, and friends saw the situation she was in. No one dared to help her or speak up on her behalf. She therefore had no choice but to remain subservient. Later in 2015, while shooting a movie in Cape Town, South Africa, Miss Ventura began a flirtatious relationship with an actor. She spent New Year's Eve with this actor, but Mr. Combs soon found out. Mr. Combs called the actor and threatened him. The actor proceeded to call Miss Ventura and tell her, "You really need to call Mr. Combs." In or around March of 2016, during an F4 at the Intercontinental Hotel in Century City, LA, Mr. Combs became extremely intoxicated and punched Miss Ventura in the face, giving her a black eye. After he fell asleep, Miss Ventura tried to leave the hotel room, but as she exited, Mr. Combs awoke and began screaming at Miss Ventura. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. He grabbed at her and then took glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her, causing glass to crash around them as she ran to the elevator to escape. She managed to get into the elevator, and when she got to the lobby, quickly took a cab to her apartment. Upon realizing that her running away would cause Mr. Combs to be even angrier with her and completely struck in his vicious cycle of abuse, Miss Ventura returned to the hotel with the intention of apologizing for running away from her abuser. When she returned, hotel security staff urged her to get back into a cab and go to her apartment, suggesting that they had seen the security footage showing Mr. Combs beating Miss Ventura and throwing glass at her in the hotel hallway. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs paid the Intercontinental Century $50,000 for the hallway security footage from that evening. After this, Miss Ventura left her home in Comstock and went to hide away at a friend's home in Florida. James Cruz, president of Bad Boy Entertainment, tracked Miss Ventura down and told her that her single would not be released if she did not answer Mr. Combs' phone calls. So that's another opportunity she had to escape. But she was still hanging around with the hopes of having her singing career take off. Let's carry on. A woman who worked at Sony Music reached out to her with a similar ultimatum concerning her record. Incredibly, Mr. Combs even convinced one of his attorneys to call Miss Ventura at this time. This lawyer told Miss Ventura that it's in your best interest to call Mr. Combs back. Each time Miss Ventura tried to run away, Mr. Combs and his powerful network would force her back in. Mr. Combs' tight hold over her life had irreparably damaged her friendships. Around 2018, when Miss Ventura was with her friend Kerry Morgan in her house, Mr. Combs used his key to Miss Ventura's house and came in unannounced. He and Miss Morgan had an altercation, and during which Mr. Combs threw a hanger at Miss Morgan. Upon information and belief, the incident resulted in a settlement between Mr. Combs and Miss Morgan, and Miss Ventura ended up paying Miss Morgan additional funds in an attempt to resolve the dispute between her close friend and her abusive and controlling boyfriend. The relationship between Miss Ventura and Miss Morgan had been strained since this time. Seeing the extreme measures Mr. Combs took to keep a tight hold on Miss Ventura and isolate her from her support network, and having experienced the repercussions of rejecting his demands, Miss Ventura felt that saying no to Mr. Combs would cost her something: her family, her friends, her career, or even her life. Then the final straw was in 2017 and 2018. Uh, Miss Ventura became desperate to leave Mr. Combs and his abuse of her. She recognized that if she stayed with him, she would never be able to have a successful career or ever be physically or mentally safe. She therefore became determined to completely break away from Mr. Combs and his cycle of abuse and made concerted efforts to avoid him. In September of 2018, she joined Mr. Combs for a dinner at an Italian restaurant in Malibu, California, for what she believed would be a discussion about concluding their relationship for good. That was naive of her. After dinner, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura returned to Miss Ventura's home, which was paid for by Mr. Combs. Mr. Combs forced himself into her apartment and tried to kiss Miss Ventura. She told him to stop and attempted to push him away. Mr. Combs then forcibly pulled off Miss Ventura's clothing and unbuckled his belt. He proceeded to Miss Ventura while she repeatedly said no and tried to push him away. Soon after, Miss Ventura took steps to completely separate herself from her longtime abuser, including by leaving the home that he paid for and returning the car he purchased for her. Despite moving away, Miss Ventura's address was posted online in early 2019, leading to fears for her safety. Miss Ventura, who was under immense duress during the months after Mr. Combs' ar- I won't say the whole word, like I said before, I'm going to use code words. After months after he urged her, took all steps possible to entirely remove herself from her abuser's ambit, including by entering into contracts to end her record deal with Bad Boy Entertainment. And it carries on. As a result of the immense trauma Miss Ventura endured for over a decade with Mr. Combs, she has suffered and continues to suffer from immense emotional distress. Following her escape from the cycle of abuse and trafficking she endured, she struggled with the physical and mental manifestations of her trauma. The birth of her two children, however, allowed her a new lease of life and gave her purpose. She credits her children with saving her from the trauma that had consumed her over a decade of her life. Except for the months when she was pregnant with her children, Miss Ventura struggled with her addictions to drugs and alcohol that were established and fueled by Mr. Combs. She returned to substances to drown out the memories of her abuse without being intoxicated. She suffered from horrific nightmares of the forced acts that Mr. Combs demanded she participate in during the regularly scheduled FOs and of the physical beatings that she endured throughout her relationship. She had difficulty eating or sleeping, and her relationships with her family suffered. During this time, she frequently had thoughts of ending her life. Poor thing. To rebuild her life and her career, Miss Ventura needed to completely reinvent herself. She checked herself into inpatient treatment at a rehabilitation center where she first confronted the extent of the trauma she lives with. She has required intensive therapy and other medical care to recover from Mr. Combs' abuse, and she will forever live with the physical and psychological repercussions of the over a decade of violence, fear, exploitation she endured. Although Miss Ventura was unable to speak up against the years of abuse she endured, at the hands of Mr. Combs, she has since been able to also confront her abuser and to hold him and those who enable his abuse accountable for their actions. The plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs, as if fully set forth herein. So I'll skip that bit and come to the end where she's saying she wants money representing compensatory damages, including consequential damages, lost wages, earnings, and all other amounts of money, together with interest on these amounts according to proof. She also wants money for the mental pain and anguish and severe emotional distress according to proof. For She wants money for punitive and exemplary damages according to proof, for attorneys' fees and costs, for prejudgment and post-judgment interest, and for such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. That was filed on the 16th of November 2023, that is yesterday. Whew, that's a lot. So, if you check what people had to say on Diddy's Instagram page, it seems like a lot of people side with Kathy because she's not the only person who has been a victim of his. That is as per the rumors that have been circulating online, because people have been claiming he has something to do with the demise of his second baby mama, Kim Porter. And he also has been linked to the demise of Tupac, because the case has been pulled up again, and the guy who is in custody has been claiming he got orders from Diddy to kill Tupac, and actually Diddy paid like $1 million, which never got to him. So it seems like 2023 is the year of reckoning for Diddy. So if we go to his Instagram page, we'll be able to see what people really think about this matter. So on his latest post, you can see, yeah, just like I said, somebody is asking, like this comment, if you want Kim Porter's death investigated. So obviously this is a person implicating Diddy for Kim's death, because Kim was preparing to write a tell-all book. So maybe because he feared she was going to reveal his nasty secrets, he decided to end her life. And then somebody over there asked him, "You have daughters and you treat women like that. I stand with Cassie." Finally, somebody spoke out. Another one says, "We stand with Miss Ventura. Who you are has been clear for decades." Yeah, there's been a lot of allegations about him doing his artists dirty, because it seems like everyone who was signed in his label ended up in a financial mess. So another one said, "Loving this comment section, Diddy for prison." The other one is, "You asked him, oh, you blow up Kid Cudie's car. That's crazy." Another one said, surviving Diddy, about to be crazy. That's a person likening a documentary that's going to come out. The same documentary that put R. Kelly behind bars. Then another one says, Jaguar Wright has been trying to tell people about P. Diddy, but people have always been calling her crazy. So this is a lady who has been pretty much dropping hints about Diddy's nasty lifestyle and how he mistreats people, especially his girlfriends. Another one says, I believe Cassie. Another one says, Cassie never smiled with you. So it seems like, and then said, I want to hear J-Lo's side. It seems like the only girlfriend who managed to escape him and move on to a better relationship is J-Lo. So we can learn a lot from this matter because it seems like Cassie was leading a very lavish life. We can see that from their photos. Yeah, you see all those photos. You see, that's the two of them seated on the front row of a game. So that means they paid expensive tickets. See them there seated next to Jay-Z and Beyonce. Then we'd see them in like fashion shows, seated on the front seat. That's the two of them attending Met Gala, I think. It's another red carpet event. So you can see from outside looking in, you'd think Cassie was really enjoying herself. But it turns out behind the scenes, the girl was really suffering. And that is if whatever she's saying is accurate. I tend to believe what she's saying because I don't think you'd be so crazy to reveal the details she's revealed. Yeah, because that would mean she should be opening herself up to a very hefty defamation lawsuit. So, and because other people have accused Diddy of mistreatment, it seems like whatever he tries to do, he's already been sentenced by the court of public opinion. So, whatever he tries to do, he's guilty, whether he likes it or not. But for us, especially young ladies, I think this is a very good cautionary tale because a lot of people would have liked to be his girlfriend. You can see, like, young Miami is the one being paraded at the moment, but the guy keeps humiliating her. You see, when he was receiving his BET Lifetime Award, he called out Cassie, yet that time Cassie was already married and was even a mother of two. But then, yeah, because the event was held last year, and young Miami accompanied him to that event. She actually made a placard cheering Diddy on, but Diddy did not notice that gesture. He was interested in shouting out Cassie, who is supposed to be somebody's wife. Let's just see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it 100 with y'all. I was in a dark place a few years, you know what I'm saying? And I had to give a special thank you, shout out, thank you, all that love. I gotta give a special thank you to the people that was really like there for me. Bishop T.D. Jakes, my chief of staff, Christina Coram, KK, Lorianne Gibson, keeping me free. Yeah, also Cassie for holding me down in the dark times. Love.
So you see, as he was shouting out Cassie, the silly girl, young Miami, was there with her placard. Go, Pappy! But he ignored that. You know? And shortly afterwards, another woman, the rumors started swirling that he made a baby with another woman. This woman happens to be somebody's ex-wife. And so this lady got pregnant sometime in 2022. So that time Miami thought she was the main girlfriend. Turns out this woman was somebody's wife. So when she was conceiving, her divorce hadn't gone through yet. So I don't know whether she had already separated physically from her hubby or if she didn't care and decided to have an affair with Diddy because of who he is. So for the young ladies, like I said, this is a perfect learning opportunity because in as much as you may want to be in a relationship with a rich guy, uh, most of these guys, um, especially in the showbiz industry, will have so many girlfriends. And just because he has many girlfriends, it doesn't mean that you can also see other men, because you can see how Diddy was reacting whenever Cassie decided to have a relationship with another man. He would threaten the men because he has more power than them. And he treats you like an object of his. So once he slept with you, it means you're not supposed to see other men. So your life is supposed to come to a standstill. Hmm? But then this lawsuit that Cassie has filed is kind of leaving a sour taste in mouths of people who believe the allegations are true, because it seems like she's not pursuing criminal justice. It seems like she's more interested in financial compensation. So I don't know whether this is enough to address the harm that the alleged abuse has caused her. So, like I said, no matter what Diddy does, his reputation has taken a tank, especially in this Me Too era we are in. Because once a man is accused of especially harming a woman, he's always deemed guilty in the people's public court until he's proven innocent. And even if he's proven innocent, the sordid details that Cassie has put out on the legal search will not be erased from social media anytime soon. So it's going to have a very negative impact on his kids. He's now going to become a butt of jokes. And if it's true, if this matter is proven in court, his net worth is going to take a tank as well, because people won't want to do business with him. And even before this matter came to light, he'd already severed ties with the Diageo, the owners of Shiroc, which he was um, promoting over the years. So much so that people thought he had shares in that company. So he had a a legal dispute with the company, which dropped him. So we just learned that he was actually an overqualified influencer and not a shareholder of the company. So this matter, I'm sure, will keep developing new twists and turns. And as that happens, I'll be here to keep you updated. So just like this video, share with as many people as possible. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.